Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Another Day, Another Vagina, where we talk about everything women from A to the V. This is Jen.
Hey, everyone. This is Natalie.
And today we're going to talk about communication.
Oh, that's a big thing.
I know. We have to talk to our spouses.
Yes, the lack of.
Well, I've been married a year. How long have you been with your husband?
13 years.
God, 13 years.
Yeah, 13 years.
So does communication get any easier?
I don't know if it gets easier. I think it just depends on your partner and if you guys can build that good communication with each other.
I feel like my partner and I don't communicate at all.
I think that's an issue for a lot of people, though.
Well, I communicate. He doesn't actually listen to the words that are being communicated.
Okay, well.
So, I wonder if is there something that I'm not communicating, or am I not doing it properly?
I think we need a professional.
We need a professional. Well, lucky for us, we have a professional with us today. Welcome, Miss Robyn Smith. It's so nice to have you with us today.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, you two, Natalie and Jen. So great to be with you.
Good. Well, if you'll just take a minute to tell us who you are and what you do.
Oh, well, I am a trauma and relationship coach, and I love supporting women and couples and men too in their relationships and how to have a healthy dynamic, a positive flow in your relationship, to get underneath what's in the way of just more ease and joy and connection in your relationship. And I also have been married for over 22 years, and I'm happily married, I should say. And we have a great connection. And we moved to Costa Rica 2 years ago, and it's been super challenging, but it's strengthened our bond. So I'm just quite happy that, it does keep getting better over here.
I was going to say, let me ask you what I asked Natalie. Does it get easier with time?
It depends. It depends if you get, tools and support and all the things that are important in relationships.
Well, I'm glad you're here because I wanted to ask you, what is possible when you have good communication in your relationship, and why is good communication important?
Yes. Well, I think you've spoken to it a little bit as far as sometimes people don't communicate at all. People have different communication styles. So it's so important because we all, especially when we're in a long-term committed relationship, we're there to connect. Yeah. We're there to feel supported and loved and important. And it's hard to know if that's happening, if there's not a good, strong feeling of connection in the communication. If you don't feel like you're being heard, if you don't feel like you're being understood, if you don't feel like they get you, you're not going to feel that kind of connection that you're probably there for. So these are reasons why it's so important, because it does help us in all these areas. And so that is what's possible when you have it. When you have effective communication, you get to feel heard and understood. You get to know that somebody's with you, they care about you, you feel like you're more on the same team when the communication is flowing. You don't feel like you have to work for it, or like you're fighting each other for understanding or, being right. Like that stuff can fall away, and you can just also enjoy more of the other good parts about life and relationships, not have to work in the communication so much. So these are what I see as the top reasons, communication.
And if I do that, can I move to a tropical area?
Yes, you can. In fact, you can do that anytime. But you know what? I would not have done it alone. I wouldn't have done it unless we had a really strong relationship already, because it took everything to leave, our community, our home that we built, and just everything, we just sold it all and came down here. So, yeah.
Well, actually, we brought you on the show because we need to know someone that lives there.
Oh, well, come on down.
We're hoping you have an extra room. Yeah, that just worked out really great.
Okay, perfect.
So I don't know. I guess in my own relationship, I feel like my pitfall is maybe I don't feel heard. Like you had mentioned that.
Yeah.
What are some of the main communication pitfalls that you see with your clients?
Yeah, that's a great one. And I think about like what we do, like what comes out of our mouths that just is not working, and it's getting us further from connection. So the top three that I like to name are blame, criticism, and defensiveness. And we can break those down a little bit so people, are getting what I'm thinking when I'm saying that. So I'm communicating clearly, right? So blame. So blame looks like pointing the finger, like who's at fault? You're at fault. So often blame comes with a you statement, or maybe also the finger pointing, but not necessarily. But it's looking like trying to point the finger at the source of the problem. So it might be like you always leave the toilet seat up, or you never clean the dishes, or you're always late, or why are you blah blah blah. So there's that you, and that that creating a cause of the problem. And the problem with blame, as you can imagine, is nobody likes to be blamed. And when you get blamed, you're probably going to defend or blame back. Well, you did da da da, and so then there's this escalation, and then you're just arguing, and it doesn't feel very good. So that's a main pitfall. And I know for me, I grew up in a household where there was always blaming going on, and so I really learned to do that. It just became natural for me. So so that's what happens. And then criticism is like next level from blame. It's more about attacking someone's character, and it's demeaning. It's not saying you did, but you are. So it's really pointing to like how they are a problem or at fault. So you are an idiot. You're, how could you be so mean? You're so rude, whatever it might be. And so blame criticism can be more hurtful, can really kind of, go to the heart. And again, it doesn't go well. The response to criticism, no one likes to be criticized because it does hurt. And so the response is probably going to be another criticism back, another escalation, or defensiveness. And so defensiveness is the number three that's so common, and it's pretty much like normal for humans to defend, because we're trying to protect our sense of self, about how we're trying to protect how others see us. So for me, it feels like a wall, like you can't get me. So I'm gonna attack you back, or I'm gonna say, I don't know what happened. I didn't do it. They did it, or or not take responsibility in some way. Like there was too much traffic, I couldn't do it. So defending, again, it doesn't feel good because there's usually not responsibility involved, and it also feels like it's a push. So people tend to push someone away, and then you feel again more distant when that's happening.
Do you feel like you have any of those? I know for sure I'm very defensive.
I feel like, when you're in church and the preacher's on your toes. That's how I feel right now. Yeah. I do, because I see me as the blamer, and I see my husband as being defensive.
Yeah.
And so, I go right along with what you're saying. Were you thinking that too?
I think I'm kind of a little bit of all three, actually.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, it's hard because like
exactly.
with my relationship, like he's so laid back, nothing bothers him, and everything is just kind of a go with the flow. And he won't tell me until like months later, hey, by the way, XYZ happened, and you said this to me, and that really hurt my feelings. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, half the time I don't remember because I was probably upset about something. And most of the time it's because of his lack of his time management. It's just, it's awful. But it's something that I've been dealing with for 20 years. So it's
right.
If it's not going to change by now, it's just never going to change. I have to learn to just deal with it. I get that.
Yes, that's right.
Well, that's a good question for you, because a lot of people will say, well, I've done this for 20 years. He's done this for 20 years. But with the people you work with, there is hope.
I believe so, or I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Oh, I said I believe so, or I definitely would not be doing what I'm doing.
Exactly.
So what do you think gets in the way of having a healthy communication that people don't discuss?
Yeah, I love that question because, I gave you some pitfalls, but what I love to look at is what's driving this communication, what's driving the frustration that you might be having around the time management or his lack of, actually reporting to you what he's feeling or what's going on for him. And so when we get underneath and we get into like, what that might be triggering in you, then we're looking at usually early childhood trauma stuff. And by trauma, I don't mean only like if you were physically or sexually abused or had a big accident. I mean, there's so many things that we now consider developmental and complex trauma, which is what I work with regularly, where maybe your parents were working all the time, they didn't have enough time for you, or somebody was in the hospital for a long time, so they weren't available, or somebody was ill, or your parents divorced, like what happened to me, and so you just didn't get what you needed, or they were harsh with you and they were critical, or God, parents who are very critical, that really makes an impact, and it really is hard on your self-worth. Or sometimes you have parents or other caregivers who only show love when you do well. So then you're always trying to do well, be the A student or the perfect, look perfectly. If you feel like your love is dependent on your looks or your performance. So all these things can affect how you feel and who you feel you are, your identity when you're growing up. And it's so crucial that we have a lot of love and support as we're forming our identity, or we feel really bad about ourselves. We feel insecure, we feel unworthy, we feel not good enough. Or if our trust was betrayed, then we don't trust. And so we have all this that can come with us into our adult relationships and then can affect how we're perceiving other people's communication and how we're communicating. So for somebody like, your example is great, Natalie, with the difference between you, he's really laid back and maybe you're needing things more organized or whatever it is. For somebody else who was with him, it might not be a problem, right? Because they're laid back, whatever, no big deal. And I totally relate to you, by the way. So I'm not no judgment at all. And I think there is by the way, I think it's kind of common where men, not all the time, not saying across the board, but there is a theme where women are a little more like wanting things a certain way and men are more, carefree or easygoing. Just saying, not all the time. But in any case, we can look at, well, what's so hard for me about this? And why do I feel so agitated? What's this stirring up in me that he's not, keeping his agreements or not showing, keeping track of time or responding to me, and that's where we get more understanding of what's going on under the surface. And so all of that is affecting how we're communicating or how we're hearing, because when we're not feeling lovable, we're going to hear a lot of things as, oh, well, that means you don't love me. Oh, that means you don't care enough, or we're going to get more anxious for that proof of our worth and our lovability. Does that make sense?
Yes. I feel too like I don't know about you, but I know me personally, like I've never picked the right guy. It's always been someone that I knew wasn't good for me, but still did it anyways, kind of thing. A lot of people, consider like daddy issues and things like that. I mean, I had my dad, we didn't have the greatest relationship, but my dad was there. My parents got divorced when I was little. I know that was hard for me. But I think just the lack of not learning to communicate from a young age, which I think is a lot of what a lot of people lack. We don't know how to communicate, or we're afraid 100%. To communicate. We avoid situations. So like, what are tips for that?
Yeah. First, yes, absolutely. Like, part of how we might deal with a difficult situation as a child, if your parents are, punishing, you might try to be really good, or you might hold back so you don't get punished, right? So,
correct.
So there's a lot of strategies we developed when we're young to help us survive these difficult situations, and then they're still playing out. So you and most people, don't pick well in the beginning as we're learning about ourselves and developing, and then at the same time, it's sort of like you pick who that is that you need to learn that lesson from. I think play that out again.
Yes, that's true. It's true.
So I do want to answer your question, and the tips I'm going to share about communication today are, two of them are really foundational. So I just want to say that, like, when we want to have a meaningful conversation with somebody, we want to set the stage for that so that we're most likely to get our needs met in that conversation. So I'm going to share those first two that are, related to this. So the first one is eye contact. And it seems pretty basic. You should look at somebody, but a lot of the time we're not looking at somebody because we're looking at our phone and we're thinking, yeah, I got you. I hear what you said. Yes. And our attention is divided. And so it's really impossible to fully give someone that kind of listening that they're looking for. And when someone's giving you eye contact, you feel like, okay, you're here with me. So there's a certain relaxation that occurs when I know you're with me. I've been with a client and another person who I was in a workshop with who couldn't look at me, and they would look around a lot and look sideways, look down. And it was really disconcerting for me because I just like, are you here? It seems like they're thinking about something else or they don't care. And that was my interpretation, because that's also related to my childhood wound. But I think most people feel that way. And so again, if you want to have a meaningful conversation, the eye contact makes a big difference. And some people have a hard time with eye contact. So I do want to mention that client, I know for sure, had a lot of early trauma. And so it's the earliest trauma that can really affect our ability to stay connected to somebody and with our eyes. So if someone's listening and that's you and it's hard for you to have eye contact, don't be hard on yourself. It's something that you can get better with. You can do some inner work to get to a place where you're more comfortable with it. And then those of us listening who have somebody in our lives who can't give us eye contact, you can know it's probably not personal. It's probably their stuff, and that's just really difficult for them. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one is consent. And I love that consent is kind of a buzzword these days. Consent is really about getting permission for the conversation. So if you want to have an important conversation and you're saying, hey, I need to talk about this thing, you want to ask when your partner or whoever is available for this conversation. When can we talk for 30 minutes? When can you really be present with me? So you want to make sure they're available physically, they're in the room, they're able to give you eye contact, they're not distracted by something, they're able to give you the time you need, and they're available emotionally. They're not already overwhelmed with some intense, emotion that's coming through, some anger about something or sadness or something. And they're also available energetically. They're not falling asleep on you. They're not starving and unable to pay attention. Mentally, they're not working on some other thing that they're, processing. So when you get that, when you say, hey, I need this, and they say yes, you're much more likely to have the conversation you want. I'm not saying everything's going to go perfectly, because then there's also all the skills that you could learn to help that conversation. But setting the tone for it helps so much, the consent and the eye contact. And then a skill that you can add to all that is reflective listening. And we want that for ourselves, and we want to offer that for somebody, so that when they're speaking, you can say, okay, let me just make sure I understand what you're saying. And you can reflect back a little bit of what you heard to just check like you're on track, you're tracking them. And again, when you offer that, the other person feels heard and understood, or they can say, actually, that's not what I said, or that's not what I meant. Let me correct you. And then you can get back on track again. So you're going to feel more connected. So those are some powerful skills, and again, pretty foundational for a more important conversation.
Those are super helpful.
I was going to
really
say, I think I'm going to lose my husband and not fall asleep. But that's going to be very important. But one thing I love that you said was saying what I heard back. You called it reflection, is that right?
Reflective listening, I call it.
Yeah, reflective listening. Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
So if I say, Natalie, it hurts my feelings when you make fun of how tall I am, then how would you respond?
I hear you, but you also make fun of how short I am.
See, we need like communicating with your podcast. You know.
Yeah, she's got really bad communication skills, let me tell you. Very bad.
And real quick, just to go back to one more thing you said.
Can I coach you?
I know. We're trying to get in as much free coaching as we can. But when you first told us that you coach trauma, now I understand a little more of what that means. I guess when I think of trauma in your childhood, like you just made me realize that I do have that because my parents, they stayed married. God only knows why. They hated each other. They love each other now that they're old and disabled, but they hated each other. And they fought every single day. Fought every single day through things to the point that I would hide in my closet.
Yeah, that's trauma, girl. That is definitely trauma. That's traumatic for your system. Yes. Yeah. And you learned some bad habits probably from that too, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and when you grow up with, I mean, that's just one of many things I'm sure you've heard. You're not going to be an expert at communication in your relationship.
No. You know what? Nobody gets, I mean, nobody I know was trained in how to communicate skillfully as a child. Most parents don't have those skills, and it's not taught in the schools like I wish it was. So we're all just, figuring it out as we go, and often making a lot of mistakes and hurting people along the way and feeling hurt when we shouldn't, when we don't need to. And so, it's sort of a lost art that I think needs to really get some attention. And so I'm happy that we're offering this out today.
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you, you certainly have 2 new clients here. And you have a free communication training coming up. Is that right?
I absolutely do. Yeah. For those listening, soon after this drops, it is starting March 18th. And it's called the Rock Your Relationship Communication Training for Women. And what we do in this training is the focus of it is how to get heard and understood, how to stay out of arguments and avoid triggering the defensive response, and how to feel more connected. So those are the sort of the key points we're touching on. And every day in the training, it's just about an hour a day, by the way, and it's free and it's online, so anyone can join. And in that time, I give a tool each day, or sometimes 2, and I send you away with a little assignment. Go practice this and come back into the group. And we have a Facebook group, and then people can report how they're doing or ask questions, and I coach people along the way. So people get major transformation in the few days of the training. It's 4 days, and then there's some bonus classes as well. So it's powerful, and it really can help you shift the patterns of, whatever it might be, the defensiveness or the tendency to want to argue or blame, things like that. Complaining. We talk about complaining too.
Right.
I think a little bit of everything that we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I think all that sounds great because, we all just want to be happy. We all want to be happy. A lot of people know if you listen to the podcast, this is my 3rd marriage. So I like to collect husbands. Yeah, it's my 3rd marriage. But the first 2 had communication breakdowns for sure. Yeah. And this one is so important to me that I want to do everything I can to make it happy and make it last 22 plus years, so, and I feel like a lot of our listeners feel like we do. We want their relationship to be the best it can be, and you have to work at it. Right. And so Yeah, so I'm excited about your class, and I know hopefully a lot of our listeners will be too.
Yes. Now,
and
how do they find it?
Yeah, well, let's give people a link. So you can put that in the show notes. So we'll make sure people can also go to robynsmith.net, Robyn with a Y, by the way, ROBYN Smith.net. And at the top, you'll see an option to join the training at the top of the page. But yeah, we'll put the link in the show notes so people can click on that and get registered. So you'll get an email about, how to join us once you register. And by the way, I give prizes away every day because I want to encourage people to participate and actually learn and show up. Yeah. And there's a $2,000 grand prize towards relationship coaching with me. Yeah. So some lucky winner who's going to fully participate, show up and make big, make a lot of effort to really learn is going to get a lot of benefit. Uh-oh, I don't see you guys anymore. So should I just keep talking? It might just be me now. Okay, so I hope you guys join the training and rock your relationship communication training for women. And you can also find me in my Facebook group, Rock Your Relationships Facebook group for women. It's actually called the Rock Your Relationships Sisterhood. So I hope you join me there. Here we go.
Here we go. Sorry,
continue.
Did you? Oops, are you there?
Yes, we're here.
Yes, we're here. Can you see
I lost my picture. Hold on, where am I? Oh dear, I totally lost it. One sec. That is so strange. I'm sorry.
You gotta love computers.
Oh, it's probably just, okay, I see what I did. One of the tabs. Yeah, so I really hope to meet you more in the training and your listeners. It's powerful. And again, so I didn't have communication skills. I was engaged to be married before my husband that I'm with now, and we were arguing all the time. It was so frustrating. I wanted to pull my hair out. I just never felt heard. Not never, but I didn't. We had power struggles, just that back and forth defensiveness. Everybody's trying to be right and, make the other person wrong. And it didn't feel good. And so I do know that it's possible and that there is hope because of where I'm at in my relationship. And we have had beautiful connection and it does keep getting better. So, but that's because we've put in the time. I've learned a ton of tools and I apply them regularly. And I definitely know I couldn't get here without this type of training. So I'm passing on what I've learned in the training.
Well, we greatly appreciate it. And I'm excited. I'm going to join.
Awesome.
So you can meet us too while you're there. Yeah. Well, thank you again, Robyn Smith, for coming on and discussing all this with us and our listeners. And we just really appreciate you. It was so nice meeting you. And we're going to have great relationships. Yes, we have.
Yes to that. Thanks for having me, you too.
All right. Well, you have a good night.
You too. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us.